Hey guys, this is Mrs. Herring Watson. Since this class, Integrating Technology and Teaching, is about how we can use technology to create good outcomes for students in our classroom with their learning, I think it's really important for us as teachers to explore the technology resources available to our students on the front end and have a good working understanding of our device. And so what I wanted to do is just give you a tour of your iPad and the iOS, that's the operating system that your iPad runs on. Right now we're on iOS 11, but this fall we'll make the move to iOS 12. Now the great thing about updates is they're there for a reason, to make your iPad more functional and useful. However, a lot of times we get really frustrated with updates as users because we have to adapt the way that we interact with our devices. So I just want to give you some helpful tips so that you feel confident working your way around your device and using it as an important part of teaching and learning. So we're going to start by just talking about the dock and the control center. The dock is the bar at the bottom of your screen that holds your most used apps. So the apps on the left side of the little gray line are customizable. I can click and hold until my apps start to shake, and I can move apps around my screen. So let's say that I don't really use my reminders very much. I can pull reminders out and I could pull something else down there. So for example, let's say that I use Google Drive all the time, which is true. I use it all the time for storage. So I could put it down here, and that ability to interchange apps just makes it easier for me to get what I need immediately. To the right of that little gray line are the most recently used apps on your iPad. So I'm going to hit the home button so my app stops shaking. And so these will change. The ones on the right will change all the time depending on the apps that you're currently using on your iPad. Now, if I take my pointer finger and swipe up from the bottom of the stream or from the screen, it shows my control center. And the control center has really changed a lot over the life of the iPad as a device, and it is so much more useful now than it ever was in the past. So to the left, you can see I have panes that show the apps I've used most recently. If I want to close an app, then all I have to do is swipe up on that app and it will disappear. And then to the left, I have all these tools that I can get to really quickly from the control center. So I'm going to show you how to customize your control center because you might find that you don't have the same apps to the right that you're seeing on my screen. So if I go to settings, and then in the settings, I go to control center and I choose customize controls. And now I have all these options that I can pull into my control center. So let's say that I want to have access to the magnifier. I just click to add it. I want to have quick access to a stopwatch. That could be really useful as a teacher in the classroom when I'm trying to keep kids on task for a certain amount of time. I use my timer for that as well. So anything I want to add from the bottom, I just click. If I want to get rid of something, I simply hit the minus sign and click remove. Okay, so that's how I add things to my control center. So now I'm going to double tap the home button and go back to my control center and talk to you about short press and long press. Okay, so short press means I just tap on a button and it takes me to that particular app. So I tapped on the timer, it took me to my clock. If I long press, which means I press and hold, then I get more options for each of these different tasks or apps within my control center. So for example, if I long press on the timer, I can set a timer right from my control center. Again, as a teacher, I can use this in my classroom when I'm putting students into small groups for work to quickly set a timer and then get to it, helping my students working in their small groups. If I click and hold on the flashlight, I can change the brightness of the flashlight. And that seems like a silly little thing, but can be really helpful if we need a little bit more brightness from the flashlight. I can also press and hold on screen mirroring, and it will open the different places to which I can screen mirror using Apple TV. And then I can also long press on the record button, and my record button is in use right now, so I'm not going to press. But long pressing or pressing and holding on the record button, screen record button, will allow me to either add audio, like I'm doing right now, or turn my audio off so that I can screen record with the audio muted, which can be really helpful. Another great feature in iOS 11 is the ability to use the camera as a QR code reader. So previously, if I wanted students in my classroom to scan QR codes to access resources that I have collected for them, I would have to download a separate scanner app. And that's really not a big deal, except that it's just one more step as a teacher that I have to take in order to make sure my students' devices are ready. And I have to train my students to be used to getting into that app to do a specific task. So now I can just go to the regular camera to do that much more simply. So I'm going to go to the camera from my control center, and I'm going to scan this QR code. And you'll notice that a little bar pops up at the top of the screen that tells me that it's going to open a resource in Safari. That's the resource that's linked to this QR code. So when I tap the bar, it opens the website in Safari. Now, everyone has their own preferences regarding the browser that they choose to use. I use Chrome all the time because I'm a big user of Google Apps. Many schools are Google Apps for Education schools. And I think Chrome has a lot of pros. I mean, it's a great browser and it has a lot of options for customization. However, Safari really is a great browser when it comes to accessibility within a particular website. So one part of that that's available in iOS 11 is called Reader View. And so to the left of the toolbar, you'll notice some straight lines. If I click on that, now it's stripped that web page of all the ads and additional information so that I'm just looking at a clean copy of the article on the website. This is great for all of us as readers because it helps our brain focus on the text on the screen. But it's particularly great for our students, especially if they are developing readers, because it removes those distractions and helps them focus on what's most important. To the right of the address bar, you'll see there's a couple letter A's. This is where I can customize the text on the particular website that I have stripped to Reader View. So I can change the font to a font that works better for me. I can also change the color of the page. Instead of black text on a white background, which can be kind of straining on our eyes, I can change the page to sepia or to a dark color with white text, which can be a little bit easier for us to read. So those are some features of ways I can use the iPad and the iOS in order to make an article more accessible. I can also show my students how to annotate on a website right on their device. I can do that from hitting the share button, right? So this little box with an arrow coming out of it is the share button. It gives us a lot of options for how to share a website out from our browser, but I want to show you in particular the ability to create a PDF. Okay, so now that I have a PDF of this, I can click the share button again and save this to files on my iPad. I could also drop it into Google Drive. So I have lots of options to share. But what I think is really awesome about being able to transfer this into a PDF version is that I can click this markup button and I can use any stylus or Apple Pencil to mark up the article. So if, let's say that as I'm reading, I want to highlight, I can do that. Maybe I want to bracket a paragraph so that I'll remember to go back to it. Or maybe I really want to star number 4 to look into it more. So now when I click done, I can save this file to anywhere on my iCloud drive. So I can save it to the drive, then it will be on all my devices, or I can save it to this particular iPad and I could, let's say, save it to Pages and click Add. Now I'll have access to that article later and the PDF will keep the annotations that I have already added. So again, this extra layer of usefulness really is helping to make the learning process more fluid for our students. And so the last thing that I want to show you how to do on your iPad is split screen, because I think split screen is one of the ways we can really make our use of the iPad a lot more efficient. And it's a great way to show our students how to multitask between apps without having to constantly be switching between apps in a full screen mode. So let's say that I need to work on a report and I want to add some images into that report. So I'm going to open Pages and I'm going to create a new document and I'm going to choose Visual Report. There are a lot of awesome templates in Pages for you to explore, but we're going to work with this one for right now. So I'm going to swipe up from the bottom, just at the very bottom of this screen to pull the dock back up, and I'm going to click and hold on Safari, and I'm going to drag it out next to Pages. So now I have two windows instead of just the one. And then in Safari, I'm going to look for vinyl records. And I'm going to drag this little line between my windows so I have a little bit more even spacing. And then I'm going to choose Images. And there are tons of images here for vinyl records. And I definitely want to make sure that I remind my students that when they're pulling these images into their report, they also need to be making note of the web address where they found the image so that they can properly cite their sources. But after asking them to cite those sources, they can click and hold on their image and pop it right into their report. So let's scroll down, see if we can find something. This is pretty cool. Again, ask them to note their source, drag and drop. Okay, so making it really simple to move between apps. Let's say that they needed to do some research on vinyl records to write their report. Again, I can click here. And potentially find some resources related to vinyl records. Are vinyl records still made? So once I get to my source, as I'm reading, I can make note in my report of the source that I'm using, but also the information that I need. If I want to close one of my windows in split screen, all I have to do is hold and drag between the windows to swipe it away, and then I'm back in my report and I can stay focused on the information that I'm using. Sometimes, especially with our younger students, it can be really helpful to use a template like this because it takes away the pressure of formatting so that students can really focus on the content. Even with our older students, templates can be a good way to scaffold them into working from a template that they create in the long run by showing them examples of well-formatted documents using the templates that are provided in apps like Pages. So that's how split screen works. I can also lay one app on top of another. So again, let's say that I'm working in Pages. Rather than pulling my browser next to Pages, I can also put it on top of Pages if I want to do that. That way I can see both things at the same time, move them separately, but it's just a little bit smaller screen. So those are some options that we have. If I swipe down from the top, then they're side by side again. And again, to get rid of it, I just swipe all the way to the edge. So I hope this little overview of some of the uses of your iPad and iOS 11 has been helpful. I think the most important thing we can do as educators who are using technology in our classrooms is be explorers, right? So you're not going to break your iPad by just clicking and browsing and looking through the resources that are available to you. if anything, you're going to become more informed because you've taken that time on your own to explore. I think that's also really great because it models for our students the importance of our role as learners, not just teachers. And so if we show our kids, technology is constantly changing, and so I have to be a continuous learner, a lifelong learner in this process of being the best teacher I can be. I think that that's really powerful for our kids to see us go through that learning process. The last resource that I want to share with you is tips. Okay, so if I swipe down from the top and go to the search bar and type in tips, I think the tips app on your iPad is probably one of the least used resources you have. But anytime you want to know how to do something, you can go to tips and it will tell you. So click on what's new in iOS 11. Then it will give you information about how the operating system works on the iPad, and some of the information that I shared with you can be found in the Tips app. So don't be afraid to explore. It's a great starting point if you just want to see some things that your iPad can do.